Camping can be a ton of fun. The freedom that you feel while blazing new trails and discovering areas that have only been seen by a handful of other human beings is energizing, to say the least. Whether you're out for a long weekend at a local campsite or tripping through a national park hundreds of miles away from the closest ranger station, camping can be an incredibly rewarding experience. Getting back in touch with nature, allowing yourself to reset, spending some time without worrying about your daily grind, and most importantly, switching off your gadgets isn't everybody's idea of a good time, but many wouldn't have it any other way. Any veteran camper will tell you how much they enjoy themselves. They will also, however, have a few words of caution. Camping can be dangerous, and most of all, there are a lot of things lurking in the woods that are downright terrifying. Being aware of your surroundings at all times is a good start, but when you consider everything that you should be worried about, it can add up to quite an extensive list. There are a few things that scare campers more than most, and we plan on letting you in on the 5 scariest things seen by campers. Let's begin. Number 5. Storms. When you're out camping, you can be a long way from the nearest signs of civilization. If you're tripping somewhere like a national park, these distances become even greater. One of the most disturbing things to see rolling in are storm clouds. Halfway across an enormous expanse of water in a small canoe laden with all your gear and supplies is no place to be caught when the heavens open up. Strong winds can whip up some massive waves, even on relatively small lakes, and the threat of lightning strikes is always intense. A large amount of hikers and campers are struck by lightning every year, with dozens being unlucky enough to be a target each year. Even when you're not out in the open or stuck out on the water, storms can create a myriad of problems and obstacles. Falling trees and branches are a serious risk, with even the most protected campsites being left fairly exposed. High winds are another important issue to consider, and if they start to kick into high gear, even the most experienced campers will be on their toes. The tension during storms while camping with no emergency services on deck is enough to break anyone. Fortunately, planning a trip ahead of time can help you avoid these deadly storms, as can keeping track of weather forecasts leading up to your trip. Having a hand crank radio can be a lifesaver at times like these, allowing you to keep up to date no matter where you happen to be. A little foresight goes a long way. Making sure you're prepared for any eventuality will ensure that you don't have to worry about being scared to death or worse by a bolt of lightning touching down right in front of you, or having a tree collapse on top of your tent. The danger isn't even clear after the storm passes, with half-felled trees to consider, debris blocking portages, and many previously useful campsites being decimated. If you do happen to find yourself on the water when a storm hits, immediately head to the closest campsite or shelter and try your best to get protected as soon as possible. At terrifying times like these, reacting quickly can be the difference between life and death. Number 4. Beaver fever. With less widespread destruction and devastation than a storm would cause while passing over your campsite, another serious issue that every camper worries about is giardiasis. This disease is caused by drinking tainted water. Usually, this water becomes tainted with animals' fecal matter, specifically with the ingestion of cysts. These pollutants aren't all that appetizing to think about to begin with, and aren't worth thinking about right after a meal. What makes beaver fever so scary is the side effects and after effects. Much like during a storm, if giardiasis hits, it's all hands on deck, or it could very quickly turn fatal. Making things even worse is the fact that nobody else can be sure if they're next in line for their body to begin vacating itself in the most unpleasant of ways. Watching a fellow camper succumb to this is uniquely terrifying and will scare even the most seasoned outdoorsman. This disease can leave its victim emaciated and looking like a shell of their former selves. Extreme cases require intensive rehabilitation, with a number of campers dying each year without getting treatment in time. Many veteran campers believe that no purification tabs or techniques are necessary as long as water isn't collected along the shoreline in the middle of large lakes. This certainly helps lower the chances of your water being contaminated, but by no means does it prevent that possibility altogether. Carrying purification tabs is an important consideration to keep in mind when planning to go camping, even if they leave your water tasting a little off. If you run out of tabs or forget to bring them, ensuring all water is thoroughly boiled before consumption is your next best bet. There are portable purification stations designed specifically for camping that are on the market if you want to ensure that you'll have absolutely no worries. If, on the other hand, you want to save a little extra money, you can always use a number of home-brewed methods that'll do the trick in a pinch. Number 3. Bear attacks. Another danger to keep in mind when camping is that you're basically out in the middle of nowhere, about as close to being in the wilderness as you can get these days. Help, as previously mentioned, is gonna be far away and it'll take a long time to find you before actually reaching you. When you're in these spots, you'll invariably find yourself in bear territory. Known for being curious as well as fearless, these creatures are much less cuddly up close and in person than Paddington or Winnie the Pooh have led you to believe. Bears are, to put it bluntly, massive killing machines, loaded with muscle and packing enough bite strength to snap you in two. Add those massive paws topped with their flesh-ripping claws, and you've got one hell of an opponent if a bear happens upon your campsite. The basic rule of thumb is puff yourself up as large as you can and make as much noise as you can. This, in theory, will intimidate a bear and scare it into scampering off, completely convinced it was outmatched. Now, correct us if we're wrong, but we believe that making a lot of noise is the equivalent of a chihuahua trying to nip at our ankles. It's cute for a bit, but wears thin pretty quickly. Our recommendation is to be prepared at all times. When you set up your campsite, take a look at the surrounding area and make sure you don't find any tracks. If you do, it's probably time to move. Furthermore, bears will always be attracted to food. Try to avoid any food or drink that has a strong odor to it, and always hang your kit in a tree with a rope at least 100 meters from where you plan on sleeping. This way, if a bear does come poking around looking for a quick meal, you won't end up being dinner. While on a portage, try to make loud noises relatively often and speak loudly. While probably not all that intimidated by us up close, bears are naturally wary of humans and will generally avoid you if they know you're around and making a racket. If you surprise them, which usually involves both parties having a bit of a shock, then things can become incredibly scary far too fast. Whatever you do, don't run. Bears love to play tag, and most of them don't know their own strength. Play dead all you want, but after a run-in with these lumbering beasts, you probably won't need to embellish your role, and playing will be the last thing on your mind. Number 2. Abandoned cabins. If you know an experienced camper, then you can probably get a story about a scary run-in with some lunatic out in the middle of nowhere. Given enough time, you'll probably run into a hunter exhibiting symptoms of cabin fever, or maybe even a hermit who just wants to be left alone. This also goes for anyone who's come across a cabin out in the middle of the woods, whether camping or not. They can attest to the fact that the situation is intensely creepy. Images of Deliverance spring to mind, and you can almost hear that banjo twang echoing off the trees. While hunting cabins are rare in many camping spots, you'll come across them every now and then. Even more terrifying are those belonging to poachers. Shells and cartridges, both spent and live, scattering the dust-heavy shelves and beds, making the scene feel even more grim. Wise campers will always steer clear of these spots, as nothing good will ever come of them. Honestly, a tarp and a branch are better choices when it comes to laying down for the night. Even with nothing to worry about, trying to sleep somewhere when you're miles away from the nearest cell signal and not 100% sure if the inhabitant will show up at some point doesn't make for the best night's sleep. Worst case scenario, if someone does come knocking, involves running for your life, while best case still means getting the door kicked in and being greeted with a lot of scrutiny. That doesn't sound like a pleasant walk in the park either way, and is probably best avoided. Number 1. Unexplainable sounds. Nature is pretty freaky to begin with. Drop someone in a forest and wait until nighttime to watch the real hysteria kick in. The woods can be terrifying places to be at night, with plenty of unknown animals and sounds to scare the daylights out of us. One account comes out of Bristol, where 2 girls snapped a picture that seems to show a girl wearing a white shroud. The girl claims that the figure was a little girl singing at 1 a.m. Creepy, right? We're sure that these girls' minds were just playing tricks on them, but you never know. These stories are all a case of you had to be there. Imagine knowing that you're far from help, and that if you did in fact run into a creepy little girl intent on stealing your souls, there's probably nothing you could do. This is why camping isn't for those prone to stress or anyone wound up too tight. All the added elements that go into camping can send us off the deep end pretty quickly. Dark descending on the woods also brings out all sorts of predators. Listening to what's going on outside while you're trying to get a little shut-eye in your exposed tent just makes it seem even more intense. Half of what makes us scared about everything that gives us the heebie-jeebies is fear of the unknown. When it comes to camping, there are a lot of unknowns every step you take. Every tiny sound could be a Wendigo coming to get you, or a wild animal checking in on the latest dinner offerings. When we've only got one life to live, these unexplainable sights and sounds can trigger our fight or flight reflex and get astonishingly scary relatively quickly. And there, you have the 5 scariest things seen by campers. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like and share it, and if you haven't already, subscribe down below to get notified almost every single day with new videos from Top 5's finest. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, we are